Hi, this is James Cook, Assistant Professor of Social Science at the University of Maine at Augusta. I'm recording this video as a walkthrough for an exercise in working with data for my Introduction to Sociology class. If you're in my Intro to Soc class, I'm asking you to engage in what I call parking lot sociology. I actually want you to go to a parking lot, one that contains at least 20 motor vehicles. I want you to collect two variables, an independent variable and a dependent variable. Your independent variable should be categorical. Your dependent variable should be numerical. I want you to have a hypothesis about how the independent variable is associated with the dependent variable. And I want you to operationalize your two variables. I want you to describe how you measure them. I want you to give me a picture of the theory behind your hypotheses. Why do you think the hypothesis that you propose is true? And then I want you to actually go out and measure those variables for at least 20 motor vehicles. I want you to enter that data into Google Sheets, and I want you to calculate the average of the dependent variable for each of the categories of the independent variable. That sounds like a lot, but when we get right down to it, it's not quite as hard as you might think. I'm going to engage in an example right now, and I'm going to do it not with cars, but with books. So, in order to be a little bit quicker, I'm going to work with 10 books. I have them right here. I have not looked at them. I've taken them at random off of a bookshelf. And before I look too hard at them, I'm going to come up with a theory. And it's going to regard two variables, a dependent variable and an independent variable. Now, the dependent variable is the outcome I want to explain. And so my dependent variable here is the number of words in the title, by which I mean if I look at the title of a book, other than the author, how many words are there describing the book itself? Okay, not including the author or not including any side information like winner of the book award of the year in 2000. That's not a title either. What's my independent variable? Well, I think there are going to be two kinds of books, fiction and nonfiction. And my hypothesis is that fiction books will have shorter titles, a smaller word count, than nonfiction books. Why do I think that? Because I think nonfiction books are much more specific, and because they're more specific, they require more words to describe them. That is my theory. I don't know if it's actually true. And for this set of books, I'm going to find out whether my hypothesis is borne out. I've operationalized title. How do I operationalize fiction versus nonfiction? Well, I could go into the book and I could look at the pages, right? And I could find out, usually here, there's an information sheet, and it typically says this is a work of fiction, if it's a work of fiction, because there's a standard clause where the author is basically saying, don't sue me. So if that's there, I will know it is a work of fiction. If it's not there, I will assume it is a work of nonfiction. Sound fair? Okay. So I have described operationalization, which is specifically how I'm going to measure the variables. I've described what the variables are. I've described my hypothesis. I've described my theory. Right? If I were doing the assignment, I'd write these down. The next step is for me to actually enter the data into Google Sheets. So for me to do that, I'm going to start by going to my.uma.edu. If you are a student of mine at the University of Maine at Augusta, you have a UMA email account, and you can get to that account through the portal at my.uma.edu. So I'm headed there right now, and then I'll enter my username and my password, I'll log in. And as soon as I reach the portal, which can take just a moment, I will see a launch pad. And that launch pad is in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. And it's going to have a strange triangle-like looking shape, which has a yellow and blue and green. If I click on that, it will take me to a tool that's called Google Drive. I click on that. And here's my Google Drive. And if I want to start a Google Sheet, which is a spreadsheet in Google, I simply click on the upper left, New, and then I scroll down and I click the option that says Google Sheets. What could be simpler? So, once I've done that, I need to start collecting my data, and I need to start entering the data in order to be able to share it. Okay, how will I do that? Well, I'm actually going to organize my data into variables and cases. A case is a particular observation, so each book will be a case. Those cases will be rows. In columns, I'm going to have a variable. So I should have one column for each variable. Okay, so now I have an independent variable, right? And that is fiction or non-fiction. Okay, and there it is. I'm going to widen my column so that it fits the title. Okay, and then in column B, I'm going to say number of words in title. Okay, that is my dependent variable. It's the outcome I want to explain. So now I have these two columns organized. I can have some cases. So let me start out. I've already looked this up on the inside. It's a work of fiction. It's a book by Kieran Shields, and it has, the title is A Study in Revenge, A Study in Revenge, a novel. That's 6 words in the title. Okay, I've collected information for my first case. My second case, social problems. Okay. All the rest is other information. Well, that's 2 words. What is this? Is it fiction or nonfiction? Well, I can look in, and there's nothing here about fiction. In fact, it describes it as a sociology textbook, so I know that's nonfiction. And I'll proceed apace. The Turks in world history. 5 words, and that's non-fiction. Douglas Adams, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Oh, no, that's not the title. The title is So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. That's 8 words, and that's fiction. Non-fiction. Inside of a dog. What? Inside of a dog. What dogs see, smell, and know. 10 words. And that is non-fiction. Okay. Excuse me. I have a novel. Okay. Novel. And I bet if I turn to the information page, it says this is a work of fiction. Good. So I know this is fiction. This is called The Cruelest Month. And it is by Louise Penny. Interesting. Long title. Is this fiction? No, it is non-fiction. Right. In English language usage, non-fiction. And the title is I Judge You When You Use Poor Grammar. a collection, 10 already, of egregious errors, disconcerting bloopers, and other linguistic slip-ups. 19 words. That's a long title. Okay, another nonfiction. Right. This book is called Brainiac's Road Trip Activity Book. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Ahaha. Now we come to a problem. I have a book, but it actually contains 3 books in it. A Tale of Two Cities, A Christmas Carol, and The Cricket on the Hearth. Now I have to decide, am I going to include this as 1 book or as 3 books? Well, it seems to me if I go by my original operationalization, I should characterize it as 1 book. So I'm going to do that. This is Charles Dickens. It is fiction. And, oh my, A Tale of Two Cities. A Christmas Carol, The Cricket on the Hearth. That is 13 words. And now the last book is nonfiction, The Basics of Social Research. 5 words and nonfiction. Okay, so I'm done with entering my data. I'm going to want to save this, and I'm going to give it a title. I'm going to call it Book Spreadsheet. And perhaps I'm going to click on the title again to change that. Perhaps since I'm going to be turning this in, I ought to give it my name. And maybe for Soc 101. Just so I don't forget what it is. The more description, the better. Okay. Now, I have to do something here. Okay. I have to calculate the average of the dependent variable for each independent variable category. How do I do that? I'll show you how. If we first select our 2 rows, and I do that by left-clicking on the first column, holding down my left button, and then dragging over to select the second column. See, now they're shaded, they're selected. I'm going to head up to the option Data in the toolbar on top. I'm going to select Sort Sheet by Column A. Okay, and let's see if it works. What did I do now? I sorted my variables into 2 groups. Those that are fiction and those that are nonfiction. Okay, that's pretty good. So once I've done that, this works out, I want to figure out what the average is, the numerical mean is for those in fiction, and I'm going to write this down. So I'm going to actually put that right over here. I'm going to put a note here that says average number of words for fiction books, and I want to know what the average number of words for nonfiction books is. And again, I'm going to, by hovering over the line between the columns and then clicking and dragging, I am going to make my column wider. Okay, so that it shows everything. Now, how do I calculate the average number of words for fiction books? I'm going to select by hovering over the first cell of the word counts for fiction books, click, and I'm going to select by dragging then all of those values. Okay, the 6, the 8, the 3, and the 13. Now, if you take a look down at the lower right, you'll notice that it tells me the sum of these is 30. And there are little arrows. I'm going to click on that. Oh, and it tells me, when I click on it, a bunch of things. It tells me the minimum of 3, the maximum of 13. It tells me the count, that is, there are 4 values. The sum is 30, and the average is 7.5. So the spreadsheet calculates this for me. And so I'm going to enter that. The average number of words for fiction books is 7.5. Now I'm going to do the same, selecting all the number counts for nonfiction books. Okay, I'm going to select them all. And then I notice down here the sum is 46. I'm going to go and click on this button in the lower right to get all of the descriptive statistics for it. These are little tiny statistics. They're just numbers that describe. And the average here is 7.6666667. Okay. So now I have completed the assignment, almost. I need to do just one more thing. I need to share that. Okay, what do I have as a result? Well, the number of words for nonfiction books is on average larger, but it's not larger by much. And given that I only have a sample of 10 books, it looks to be essentially no different. Really, they're just about the same. I now just need to share this information. I need to post something over to the discussion board, and what I need to post is a link. I'm going to do that. I'm going to get that link by heading over to File on the top, right underneath the title, and I want to click Share. Now, it's going to want to share with email addresses. Please don't do that. Instead, I want to head over in this pop-up window to Get Shareable Link. Copy the link and turn link sharing on. So I'm going to click that, and then it will have copied a link to my clipboard. So now I can head over to Blackboard, and I'll just show you in a notepad what it looks like. Okay, well, I would go to Blackboard and I would paste it in a post in the appropriate discussion board setting for parking lot sociology. Here's what the link looks like. That's all I require you to write down. If you wanted to, you could write a note or two reflecting on it. And what I might write is that I was surprised to find that in my sample of 10 books, there was only a very small difference in the word count for fiction and non-fiction books. Non-fiction books did have, on average, a larger word count, but only by a margin of how much? I'm going to say I'm done here so I can look again. 0.16667. 0.1666667. Actually, that goes on to infinity, comma, which is really not very large. Okay, and then I could post that on Blackboard, and I would be done. If you have any questions in carrying out this work, please let me know. Remember, you're not supposed to work with books, and you're not supposed to work with just 10. You're supposed to work with motor vehicles in a parking lot, and you're supposed to work with at least 20 cases. So I will expect in your spreadsheet to see 20 cases entered. I will expect to see information like you see here. I'll expect you to share the link to that so I can look at it on a discussion board, and then we'll be all set. I look forward to seeing your results and learning a little bit about motor vehicles in the process. I hope you get a chance to learn about working with data and variables and cases through this activity just a little bit more. Thanks very much.